Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so great to connect with you over the past 5 years. The Right Now Needs Fund, it began in 2018 in partnership with Amazon. And it was designed initially to provide basic needs to all Seattle Public School students with clothing, school supplies, food, and shelter. If you want to tell us a little bit more about your role with Seattle Public Schools, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Wow, thank you. I'm so glad to be here in this opportunity to meet with you and talk a little bit about the Family Support Worker Program. And I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. I started with Seattle Public Schools. I hired first as a homeschool coordinator and then later hired as a family support worker. And I did family support work probably for about 20 years or so.
Wow.
And then I did a little bit of school social work as well.
Okay.
And now I'm currently the program manager of family support workers. And then I also serve in the role as the district's foster care liaison.
Oh, you've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you and I have been working together for what, 5 years now?
Yes.
With the Right Now Needs Fund, I love this job. This is a great job. It's a great program. And I know that, it personally connects to my life. Growing up, there are a lot of basic needs that I didn't have that I needed to really participate in the classroom. So I want to know, how did this program connect to your life? Like, what does this mean to you?
When I think about resources that we have available right now and how we can access those resources and how we can also ensure that those resources are accessed in a equitable way, if you will. I think about all of the schools that we currently have in our district. The kind of resources that are available right now and that folks have access to, we didn't have that when I was in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Alicia, tell me, how do you guys identify students in need?
That's a good question because it can come in different kinds of ways, right?
Yes.
Having those conversations with that parent or that guardian and just figuring out what it is that we can do to support. And sometimes out of that comes what we call, maybe doing an assessment, if you will. But then there's also building bonds and relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's so key and critical because when you can do that, then that way, that kind of just breaks down some of the barriers because some of our parents and caregivers haven't had the best experience at the school level. And sometimes, they may be a little hesitant to come to the school level to say, look, this is where I need some areas of support. So family support workers have done a pretty good job of figuring out what they could do to support families. Referrals, if you will, can come about in different kinds of ways, but it's usually always in a way where it's out of love and support, as I like to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I noticed that a lot of times when the family support workers do email us with requests, they know these families. And I can tell it's coming from a lot of love. It's a lot of care. It's a lot of them really just understanding their situation. And that's something that makes us feel connected to you all as well.
That's where, we have that connection at the building level, if you will, with the families and at the community levels. And then when are receiving information in terms of what's going on, then that's where our connection comes in with you, Zeynab, So one of the things I can say that my staff is very appreciative of you is not only being available by email, but also by phone if we need to talk through some of these things. So just being able to also assess the situation and talk it out with you, we're kind of helping to problem solve and kind of talk things through to figure out what's the best way to support this family with this particular request. And a lot of times it's like, right now needs. We can then make sure that the referral is making sense because everything requires documentation, right?
Yes.
But sometimes, it's, the story behind what's actually needed and whatnot to make the process go a lot smoother. So
It does.
yeah.
Honestly, I love connecting with you over the phone. It's always so fun. We always have a really good conversation. Granted, the situation is serious, but we are able to find some light, light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely.
And it's just great to just problem solve together and be partners together.
Right.
Even if Right Now Needs can't fully solve the problem,
Right.
we can find another avenue to solve the problem.
Exactly.
And it's just always, it's great to work with you, Alicia, honestly, on this.
It's really interesting when you sit down and talk with some of the families and the caregivers when they begin to share their stories with you, because sometimes you really don't know what folks are going through, right?
Yes.
And just knowing that we have resources that we could tap into, to be able to support in that area. And a lot of times that can help out with kids being able to show up to school consistently.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we had students whose attendance is impacted because of a certain basic need maybe not being met.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we think about transportation, we think about location of where some of our families are. I mean, how we're trying to set up transportation or trying to set up certain resources to be able to take off the barrier,
Yeah.
from a student being able to be at school consistently, or how they're showing up. I mean, it's really interesting in terms of some of the requests that'll come through. But I also have to say, too, is we've also helped families that have been in the position before where they've helped other families.
Can you go more to that? How do families sometimes help families?
Kind of like, in community. But you saw where people were trying to come together to be of a support to one another. When we've supported folks in certain situations like that, it's helped them to get caught up. And so when I'm saying with other folks helping out in ways, that's where that community comes in. We have families that, are coming for support that may have never thought that they would be in that position before, where they would have to ask for help, and feeling okay with connecting with, that family support worker at the building or whoever's in that supportive role to at least make that connection. Even if it's a school that doesn't have a family support worker, they can always connect with us down at central office, and then we can work amongst the team to figure out what we can do to fulfill whatever that request may be.
That's amazing. Honestly, I love how this all works.
Yeah. And then sometimes some parents may not even be aware of how, if they do share with you, that you'll be able to help problem solve and figure out ways where you could do certain things that could help to eliminate some of the barriers that they may be experiencing that may be impactful with school attendance for their kids or even, other areas of concern.
Yeah, and especially with transportation, that is something I'm so proud that the Right Now Needs Fund is able to support with.
Yeah.
Mainly because I know that we have been getting a lot of car repair this, and that's great.
Huge.
That's huge because you don't really think about that. Like, the parent obviously needs to get the child to school, but they don't have the resources to do so.
Right.
Gas, as you mentioned, gift cards that we provide, car repair, we ask them, hey, give us an invoice. Give us an invoice, we'll pay it. We'll send the check right to them.
Right.
And I can't begin to, just relay all the support that I've heard from family support workers and how they've said this has really helped this family. This is such a great resource, and I'm just glad that we were able to ramp up transportation this year.
That is another resource that really hasn't been available. When you think about that, having that resource available through Right Now Needs Funds is very helpful for parents.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we have that too, because that was an area where there would be requests that would come through for that, and it's like, how do we help out with that? We really don't have the funds to do that, or we've never done it before, but how can we do it and make it happen instead?
And we don't, and that's another thing with the invoice. We don't ask for much. You don't need to tell us your full story. You don't need to give us any proof or any reason why we need this car repair. We will just pay the repair for the
right.
It's not a big thing for us.
Right.
And that's something that I really appreciate about this fund, is that it's so low barrier. Like, growing up, I remember going to social service agencies with my mom. We were trying to get our utility bill paid. They would ask for, her driver's license, her documentation, her income level. It was all these documents that, she shouldn't have had to bring to them.
Right.
It should have just been, hey, I need my bill paid. Can you please support us with that? And, back in that time, if we had Right Now Needs Fund, we would have never, ever experienced that. It would have been much easier. I wouldn't have had to essentially parent with my mother in these instances.
Getting back to what you're saying, you're absolutely right, because sometimes even with certain resources that are out there, trying to access them, sometimes they're the ones creating the barrier. And then it makes it very difficult for a family to be able to access that particular resource just to fulfill that need in that moment. And we're not talking about an ongoing thing. We're talking about a one-time thing where you're needing something, instead of having to just pull out everything about the cabinet from your ID and then, your proof of this, your proof of that, and whatnot. So that's the one thing I can also say that I do really admire about the Right Now Needs funds. And I mean, when we're in this position to help, we most definitely want to do what we can to be of a support and don't want to add any additional barriers.
Yeah.
or roadblocks, if you will.
Exactly.
So
Exactly, because it affects the student obviously just as much as it affects the parent. Alicia, tell me, what would it mean if you didn't have these funds available? What if the school year was going to go on 2024, 2025? What would it be like if the Right Now Needs Fund just wasn't there?
it was very challenging trying to figure out how do we support families, and there's so many needs.
Yeah.
We didn't have a whole lot of resources to tap into, so we had to be very intentional about knowing what we could do versus what we couldn't do. And sometimes that was very heartbreaking for me to say, here's the resource, I can refer you out, but I can't guarantee that they'll be able to help you. But just knowing that we have funding available, I just think that we would be inundated with so many requests that we would not be able to fulfill if we didn't have Right Now Needs funds.
Wow.
Having this resource has been very helpful for many of our families, also helpful for many of our staff members to understand that this is something that they can tap into to be able to help a family. If we didn't have it, we would have a lot of families really hurting.
Do you think they've heard about the Right Now Needs Fund and have come to you because, somebody has told them about it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's a part of that. But then I also think that there is a part to know that relationship building that many of the parents have at the school level. Folks are becoming more and more aware of having that funding available and how they can tap into it to support families at their building and students at their building too.
And one thing I really want a lot of the family support workers to know and a lot of people to know is that we understand the gray areas of the Right Now Needs Fund. We understand life has a lot of gray areas.
Right.
If you think something might be covered, ask us.
Right.
We are here to figure it out with you.
Right.
There's so many random things that come up in life.
Right.
And I know that they relate to one thing or another. Everything is connected. And if we don't address one thing, this little issue that the student has, maybe their bigger basic need is not met at the same time.
I always tell folks, we, from day to day, we never know what kind of requests might come across our desk.
Yes.
We never turn anybody away because we're not quite sure if this is something that could be covered or not, but it's like, let's put it in, let's submit it and see. Exactly. The only thing they could say is, we can't cover that, but then we can maybe perhaps try to see if we could tap into something else.
Exactly.
Especially at the community level for those organizations that we know that might specialize in certain things.
Yes.
Exactly. But it's the immediate needs being met in that moment and the turnaround.
The turnaround time.
I think that's what makes it so supportive. Yes, the one thing I could say about Right Now Needs is the turnaround has been so helpful.
We are here. You come down to our office, we'll cut you the check right away.
Exactly.
If you need a gift card, food immediately, we will get you an expedite gift card right away. I mean, everything is right now with us, and that's the whole point of the fund, right?
And word is bond, as they would say, right? And so it's like, well, we know that this is going to occur. The check is going to cut tomorrow. Let's pick up the phone. Let's call the landlord to ask them no. And then when we can do things like that, then we can also kind of halt things for a minute because they know it's coming.
Exactly.
So that's the plus.
That is the plus.
Yes.
Yes. Alicia, what is your dream for the future of the program? What does it look like to you? And how can we better support you?
It would be my hope that we can, increase some staffing, have more supports throughout all of Seattle Public Schools. I feel like we have great support at central office because then we can always consult with one another and kind of do our assessments and consultation. But when it's at the school building level, which is where kids are showing up every day, it would be great to have more staffing, if you will, kind of throughout the district that could be able to help supports in those areas.
Thank you so much for all your insight, Alicia. I really appreciate your partnership, and I love what we do together. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure